preparing to live stream. This meeting is being live streamed. Okay.
Got it.
Got it.
That's right.
Redirecting to YouTube. Preparing to live stream. This meeting is being live streamed. I'm afraid that we are just live now.
Okay.
So
and then we don't know whether people are watching
meeting
this
is
or not.
not. No, exactly. And so I mean, I can stop the live stream again, copy streaming link, and then I could stop it. But I don't know if it creates a new link, Lisa, or. Do you have the link?
Yes, I have the link. Yeah.
Maybe we can. It's nothing super secret. I mean, maybe we can just organize a little bit and have a conversation.
Okay.
Knowing that one or two people might watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And questions will arrive where? Everywhere.
There is a chat next to the stream. I have that open too, so I can see it. Hopefully. All right. Hi, everyone.
And then Instagram, Facebook.
No, just there. Nothing like because I can only have my eyes on this one, I guess. So we'll try that.
Questions will arrive where? Everywhere.
There is a chat next. Hear myself. Okay, I'm gonna start posting it.
I followed the link Jakob had sent, and then there was this echo.
Yeah.
It is probably, I don't know, 15 seconds, 30 seconds late.
And this is only patrons, no?
No, it's for everyone today.
Okay.
It's even, I think Lisa is even posting it on Reddit, so we might get some critical or more challenging comments as well. That's at least my experience with Reddit. That there can be a little bit.
Oh, there were so many questions on Reddit.
Yeah, I haven't watched.
We made that once.
You mean the one we did
a year ago?
Yeah.
I don't know how long ago. There was so many questions that was unbelievable.
Oh yeah. So I ordered a coffee cup. I will use it for. I will drink from it next time we meet. €20. No, it wasn't 20. 15 actually. With shipping, I think. But like the thing is, like Nicolas, we are not making any money of it. But this company, they do the whole production, they do the shipping, and the alternative we have is that we would do it ourselves. But I think it's just too much work. So just to get started, I know it's a bit expensive, but I think it's the easiest way to just try it out. There was like 20 people or something, I think, Lisa, who said they were interested, and maybe we see if we can sell some bags, and mostly for fun.
I have to add another detail to my constant topic. You don't feel uncomfortable drinking from cups with human faces on them?
I've never tried.
I've never done that in my life, but when I saw these cups with Freud and Rosa Luxemburg, I felt like, how does one drink from that?
I'll report that in 2 weeks. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. Yeah, just apple. No. Is that Apfelschorle you're drinking? You're German. I think your mic is off, Nicolas.
Oh, it's the best thing of German cuisine.
Great.
I've tried it once, and I don't think I ever will again. Oh. But when my son ordered it for the first time in a restaurant, I thought, Jesus, this kid is German now. And in Munich, I saw Erdbeerschorle.
Yeah, Erdbeer. Wow.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Lisa, do we have some questions already, or do we?
No, we don't have any questions this time.
Yeah.
I didn't.
No. So we'll see what comes up. Yeah.
But people know about this now. People have the link now.
Yeah, I'm sending it everywhere now. I'm about to post it on Instagram.
Okay. Okay. I can see it. May I return to the question of our plans for the coming weeks?
Mhm.
So as it says on Lisa's document, or in Lisa's document, I've promised 3 more videos about drives. And I can do that, I mean, in the coming weeks, more or less. Any week would be good.
That would be great.
Do you need my help? Do you want me to come record you at IPU on one of these days?
I mean, why not? That's better for me when there's someone there and we're like talking and I have feedback.
Are you going to be in IPU on Wednesdays?
Yeah, I can do something Wednesday between 2 and 3.
Okay. Okay.
Do you think we need devices, so to say? It's enough light now as it is, I assume.
Yeah. I don't have to bring the light, but I'll bring the computers and the phone and etc. And your mic. I've got it.
Okay. So Wednesday 2 to 3. Okay, I don't know how many we will manage to do then, but we'll do so.
Lisa, we haven't gotten anything interesting in the email or anyone who want to contribute, or I haven't really followed.
I mean, there have been 2 people who wanted to help out, I've seen, but and that's great, but I don't think we have anything for them right now. They had different
there is one person
skills
who wrote to me,
yeah.
who lives somewhere in northern Germany, Marina, and then a German last name. And she offered to do things related to design.
Right.
And then she wrote to all of us by the website. But I have no idea whether we need that at the moment or we should stay.
Yeah, I think I was in contact with her, if I'm not mistaken, also. And I said that at the moment we don't need have any requests or anything like that, but that we will keep in touch. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Oh.
Oh
no. Oh, 2 screens, so it disappeared. There you are again. I've shared the link everywhere now, so that's yeah, people are joining.
Can you see whether they're joining or not?
Yeah, there are 8 people watching now. It's probably I don't know, maybe 4 are us and.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I gave it up so as not to make the confusion and echo.
There are some people already connected, and shall we? I mean, what time is it? Shall we invite them to write questions in the chat?
Sure. Yes, please do. Yeah, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat.
But Lisa, didn't your message that was sent around, did it say that?
If it said that they can ask questions?
Yeah.
Well, it said that it's a hangout and they can discuss, or if they have any questions about psychoanalysis or the content or anything like that, they're welcome to ask anything. But yeah, I don't know. We can. I have a question for you, Nicholas, to get things started, I guess. So a Lacanian session, therapy session, it can be. It has no time limit or time restriction.
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt, but shouldn't we wait for 3:30 so that everyone can hear the question and the answer?
Sure, we can do that.
So my computer says 5 watching now, and I'm one of them. Okay. And there's the chat up there. Okay.
In Lacanian analysis, you're allowed to smoke, or
I haven't tried.
you haven't tried?
No.
No.
But I remember my first supervisor. You would open it was a flat where he had his consulting room. He and his wife, who was also an analyst, and you open that door, and it's like this smell of coffee and cigars, like magical, super sweet smell, etc. And also it was covered in books. If I ever kind of design my own consulting room, it would be exactly like the one of my first supervisor.
So much smoke that you cannot see anything around.
But I never saw him smoking actually, but it was already everything, the curtains, the couch. Not the cigarette smell, which is quite disgusting, but the cigar one, the tobacco. Super nice.
My analyst smoked. I mean, I never counted, but I assume every session.
Wow. That's a lot of smoking if you're not the only patient or so. Well, a cigar is just a cigar sometimes.
Yeah. Lisa, I think you can advertise the Swedish conference on the Berlin Psychoanalytic group, Facebook at least.
Well, I did already. I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't notice. I assume some people would be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A Swedish conference?
Well, it's from the Nordic Psychoanalytic Association, and they're in Malmö this year.
Right, I saw that. Yeah, right.
Yes, yeah. Do you have some kind of other screen, Jakob? Like, can you see anything more than we can? Like from the who is joining or how many are joining and from where, something like that?
There is a question on YouTube. So one is about the cost of training, but the first one is what is the focus of this? And I'm not sure I can reply.
Anything more than we can? Yeah, I guess the focus is just to discuss psychoanalysis, to hang out for a bit and just talk about psychoanalysis and if anyone has any questions about psychoanalysis or our content or something that they always wondered about psychoanalysis, it would be fun to discuss. It's just like a monthly hangout with Berlin Psychoanalytic. So yeah, I hope that answers kind of the question of a main focus.
And thank you, Sarah, for forwarding the news on Twitter.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you, Sarah. That's really cool. And yeah, the second question.
Begin, may I ask a very, very stupid technological thing?
Sure.
Could the people who are on YouTube, could they be with us here on Zoom so that we can see their faces and we actually talk to them? Is that technologically complicated or for any other reason impossible or problematic?
Jakob?
It's not impossible, but I think we should do that. Maybe we could consider doing that the next time
Okay.
and make it a bit more public.
Yeah, I did not mean now. I know.
No. That's absolutely possible. That's absolutely possible.
Okay, good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly. We'll wait another minute just to be official in German and. I saw that one of our patrons, their I think coffee mug was shipped now for them, so it's gonna arrive in 1 to 2 weeks to them. So that's really nice.
Good.
Mm-hmm. And I ordered the tote bag too with Rosa.
Yeah, let us know the quality.
Okay, it's 3:30. And we have at least 12 people with us right now. So very, very welcome to this live hangout with Berlin Psychoanalytic. We're so glad to have you here. Please feel free to write any questions that you have in the chat. And let's have a nice discussion about psychoanalysis and hang out for a bit. And the first question or second question, depending how, is from Richard Price. My big question, the cost of training. As I grow both psychologically and spiritually, I become even more horrified at the level of subtle corruption and profiteering. So cannot continue. What is the point of psychoanalysis if it only serves the elite, the financially well off? Without answering this question, it seems psychoanalysis and even therapy is another pursuit for the wealthy and more insulting to the poor or spiritual idealist. So what are your thoughts on this?
This is why this exists. This is how it all started, with the idea that we will try to provide things related to psychoanalysis, knowledge, recommendations, hopefully one day supervisions, free of charge, and hopefully supported by people who can contribute something. But the problem of the training being horribly expensive exists everywhere in the world. And I know so many people who have suffered from it in completely different countries, in the most developed countries and elsewhere. And this is one of the things that is that has damaged psychoanalysis so much already. So many people have given up and were not able to finish the training, who could have contributed creatively. And psychoanalysis, as I believe I've mentioned in a couple of videos, is now a profession for people who are 60, 70, 80 years old, quite rich, very comfortable, and not thinking about any revolutionary changes inside psychoanalysis or outside with the use of psychoanalysis. So I agree with Richard completely. I'm afraid I don't have a final solution, but we are trying to contribute something viable in psychoanalytic. And guys, please add something to this. These are just unorganized thoughts.
Usually what is expensive really about the training more than the institute is usually the analysis. I remember both in Chile and the UK, let's say the registration or the price of the year in the institute would be cheap, would be around the 500 euros a year. And also the institute would offer you to, if you don't have money, to pay it in installments or to give you a discount depending on, but this is actually the cheapest part because it's the analysis. It has to be many times a week. Different institutes will say different things, but 4 times a week at least, usually. That is very, very expensive. and it's necessary. And most in the institutes that I know, you need to be in analysis while you're doing the training, while you are going to lectures and seminars, and etc. And then usually you have to then work, meaning conducting analysis for almost no money at the beginning, because you need 2 cases, sometimes even more, that you need to do in order to qualify. And you're not going to be making much money out of that, considering that you might be renting a consulting room as well, and all the associated costs. So I think that the motto that we have of psychoanalysis should be free points not only towards free of dogma or things that we've talked in other videos, but also about this money consideration, which in Germany, we're a bit luckier as patients, if you want, because if you have something that, let's say, have an issue that an analyst could justify in front of a health insurance that you need analysis, you could be in analysis several times a week for years and for free. Now, in order to maybe not train, but just go to psychoanalytic therapy or psychoanalysis as a patient, and not having money, on the one hand, of course, it might be just a pastime or a narcissistic exercise for many people who are well off. But considering also that you would see patients for almost no money at the end of your training, what I've seen many people doing is to go to institutes to ask for analysis. And in many cases, they need patients because they're looking for patients to be allocated to the candidates in the last stage of training. And then you pay a symbolic fee or not much. But then the person finishes the training, and if you keep doing an analysis, probably your price is going to go up. But it is very true that it's too expensive. I don't know if there is any need for it to be that expensive.
Well, what could be the need? What could
I mean,
the need
in terms
be?
of like the costs, where not that they could charge you less because you are going to study it, or because you're going to keep paying your fees as a member of the institute later, or the association or society, depending where you are. But yeah, why is it so expensive? So what do you think? I mean, I tell you that the most expensive thing is usually the therapist, your didactic analyst, but they're going to charge you full price usually. So if I don't know if in the realities that you guys know, analysts would offer a sliding scale or a reduced price for candidates. I've never seen this.
Well, as far as I know, for instance, in Germany, the insurance pays for a patient something around 100 euro, and training analysis is usually 80 euro. And then, of course, you can talk to the individual person. But still, for 4 sessions a week, it's much less than in New York, but it's so much.
Yeah, it's
Jacob,
like,
you initiated this idea. Maybe you should say something about it.
Well, I mean, when I started to read about the history of psychoanalysis, and specifically the history of psychoanalysis in Berlin back some years ago, I was, very surprised when I got to read about the Polyclinic and how the first psychoanalytic institute in the world did actually offer psychoanalytic treatment for free. So that was, rather shocking to me. And I read a few books about it. There are things written on it. One is called Berlin Psychoanalytic. And there's also another one called Freud's Free Clinics, which is an excellent book, which speaks about the early days of psychoanalysis and, the sort of the social ethos of the time. I mean, there was a lot of Marxism, a lot of communism, a lot of isms in the air at that time, but just the idea, you know, often we think about it as this is a very exclusive practice for people with money, but it's not how it started. It was not the original vision from some of the early founders. So, I mean, with our initiative, this is a question we often get, you know, for example, but why don't you offer free psychoanalysis, or, you know, the whole question about, you know, what's our motivation in what we are doing, you know. And I think, you know, the first step that we've been taking is to just make sure that education is available outside of the institutes. Yeah, this is what we've been doing it for the last years. And then we've been thinking of, I think also we've been discussing, you know, are there other things one could do, you know, are there other ways of offering training? But this is a gigantic task, you know, but it shouldn't. I mean, it seems, you know, and it seems dangerous, you know, to continue on the path of, you know, again, having people, rich people, you know, in the late part of their life sort of training, because as Alexander said, we will miss out on a lot of creativity. And it's the same thing in Zurich, you know, it's the same thing in the Jungian world. And I was also never offered any reduced or sliding scale during my training, you know, and Zurich is one of the most expensive countries in the world. So I had colleagues, you know, one guy working as a tennis trainer, you know, to make extra money. Another guy was working in a bar, but he had to stop because he couldn't make a living. I had some savings. Some people sold their house. So it's not a sustainable model. So you're putting, this is a topic that, you know, I also don't know how much it's discussed within the structures, because of course some people are making money of this, and a training analyst is a very lucrative one. Not to be paranoid, but of course it's, you know, it's a good patient because they need to go through the training and such. So there's a lot of critique, and I think there's a lot of space for offering something differently, you know. I don't know exactly how it would look, you know. But these are just some of my reflections. I think we will continue to wrestle with this question, and again, on our little turf, do what we can in order to make it easier available.
And I'm not aware of a book with the title "The Issue of Money in Psychoanalysis" or something like that. I don't remember seeing a book like that. I would be very curious to read it. I don't remember ever seeing it.
That's true. Okay, let's continue with the next question. It's from Corvin Rick. With psychoanalysis consisting of multiple paradigmata which sometimes exclude each other, how do you reconcile two or more different psychoanalytic perspectives in your practice?
I mean, to me, I understand the reason for this question, because there is so much internal struggle and wars in the world of psychoanalysis, and proving and disproving who is really a psychoanalyst and who is not, and so on and so on. But I don't find this relevant in my clinical practice because my focus is on the patient. And as I'm listening to my patients, I almost never think about theorists. I almost never think, what would this or that author think? Because I always have a feeling, if I would be a Kleinian, a Winnicottian, a Freudian, or whatever psychoanalyst, then there would be someone or something in between me and my patient. And I wouldn't like that to happen. I would like to try to experience this person's experiences and pain as genuinely as I can. So I at least never catch myself thinking about these things. And then outside of the consulting room, I think there are universities and science and learning from other disciplines so that we can improve our paradigms and so on. But in the clinical room, I don't find this so relevant.
There are also at an anecdotal level, because I think that this is the answer, like what you just said, the fact that what is important in therapy is the client and or the patient, and one has been stuffing one's own head with many theories and things, and in many cases you would intervene as if you were a pure Bionian, and then 10 minutes after you would intervene as a Lacanian or Neo-Freudian or mentalization-based therapists, you know. And the idea would be, I think, for me at least, not to marry with any one theory, because it's impossible that one theory would cover the whole of human experience. And sometimes patients say things to me that sound like they require, it sounds like something that it could have been extracted from a Klein book or from something from Otto Kemberg or etc. And usually then it would come to mind a theory because it's like, oh, this looks so much like the case I read in this book or etc. But apart from that, really theories don't come into my mind explicitly. And what is important is that you do something that it resonates with the patient and makes the patient feel better, or learn something new.
Well, what I can notice at times is people coming into the practice who wants specifically a Jungian analysis. They might be disappointed or surprised, you know, realizing that, you know, the work is not going to be about what you read about the Jungian archetypes or complexes or, you know, mythology or a hero's journey, but it might at times have very much to do rather with childhood or early attachment or things that's more sort of, you know, studied in psychoanalysis. So as a Jungian, I think it's been at least very important for me in parallel to my training in Zurich to sort of have to build more of a foundation also in psychoanalytic thinking, both contemporary and more traditional, because there is a bias and there is a blind spot, I would say, almost, at least in the more conservative sides of the Jungian tradition, where one is very critical of some too regressive analysis, for example, or being too focused on the personal unconscious. And some people, patients and therapists, I would say, would want to sometimes to jump over that part and get right into the mythological or something like that. So I do believe, in my view, that the perspectives really complement each other. And Jung himself supposedly said that in the beginning of an analysis, you have to decide which way you want to go. If you're going to go regressive and more sort of, you know, psychoanalytic or classical, or if you want to do more of a Jungian analysis, which would be more what he called a synthetic approach, looking at, you know, what yourself sort of wants to, what wants to develop in the here and now. So of course it's not black or white or as divided as I say, but I have found it very sort of fitting together actually, the psychoanalytic and the Jungian perspectives. And I think it's almost impossible to do any analysis without, you know, having a thorough understanding and spending a lot of time on the private and the personal unconscious and what has happened in your specific life.
I would just like to add one footnote for the people who are reading cases in books. There is only a minimal number of books, single-digit number of books, where you can read actual transcripts, where every word that was said in the sentence is written down, transcribed. And empirical research shows that when you ask psychotherapists to retell the session after the session, it is quite different than the recording of the session. And then especially when we're writing books, then we select the material from the work with someone that fits the topic or the concept or the thesis we're going to make. So you forget about the parts of the session and you forget about everything else the person has said or you have said or the history and so on. You just present in 1 page or 10 pages what fits. So if you haven't had your personal analysis, try not to imagine it on the basis of what is written in books, much less on what you can see on Netflix. But there hopefully will be more and more books with transcripts that people will then be able to see what it really looks like.
Okay, we're getting quite a lot of questions now. Let's go to the next one. It's from Adriana.
Great.
Sorry. Yes, it's great. How can you differentiate in the countertransference? What is the part that comes from the patient and what is from you as a transfer when the two are so mixed up? So how do you differentiate between countertransference and something that is not countertransference but comes from you in the session?
I would like to be the person who starts every time.
You would or you wouldn't?
I would.
Okay.
Although that may be countertransference too.
But this is supposedly what is facilitated or at least put into motion with your personal analysis when you train. At least I don't think it's an easy thing, first of all, to differentiate countertransference than one's own reactions, unless the reaction feels a bit strenuous, and it does happen with patients that are a bit more, presentations that are a bit more severe, that you're invaded by things that usually you're not, like very deep fears or things that are either too not very accustomed to feel, that you're not very accustomed to feel, or in an intensity that you're not very accustomed to feel. But this is only with patients that I would say have more severe presentations, so you're kind of expecting that in a way. But I don't think it's an easy thing with people who might be more at a neurotic level, or someone that is even like similar to you in many respects. But I don't think, for example, that I can do this in a completely certain manner. I mean, I never think that a reaction of mine is completely countertransferential. I'm not a blank slate. So countertransference, even is something that might be really informative for the case of the patient, also always has something to do with me. Being it something kind of essential to my personality, like something that has to do with my development, etc., or something that might be really in the moment, like something that you could justify because the session is happening at a certain time, or because you're having money problems, or etc. But I never think that my feelings are completely countertransference. And usually I try to use that when I have the suspicion that it might be countertransferentially relevant. I try something. I do either I intervene, or I take that into account in order to have it present when I have to intervene, or to see where I'm listening from. So in no way I can differentiate it 100%. But if you intervene on something that you think is a countertransference and nothing really happens, well, maybe it was a countertransference. But I think it's not clear cut. I don't know what you think in your work, whether you have a clear cut or not. And the things that I've learned in my own analysis had to do with like general. It's not that, I mean, it's not super specific. What I learned in psychoanalysis about myself that I could use as countertransference, or at least that I know that there are certain topics that will make me feel necessarily in a certain way, because I had my own problems with that particular topic, or with that particular kind of communication style even. But it's not a super specific thing. It's just, this topic, I have to be a bit more careful of where I'm listening from, even kind of self-monitoring a bit more, because this might have to do with my own experiences. I don't know, that my family problems and my development, but never a clear cut.
I think there might be just one detail I would like to add. I feel at the same time, I agree with everything Nicolas said. I think also everything I say or not say, or do or not do in the session is partly personal and in the psychoanalytic jargon, countertransference. What I've said, when I've said it, how I've said it, always has something of mine and is never simply technical, robotical. So in that sense, I don't think you can make this distinction. I agree with Nicolas. I don't think you can make this distinction. It is incomparably easier for me to make it when I'm supervising people than when I'm thinking about my own sessions. And that is what makes this job so interesting. It is never going to be clear-cut. So there is so much space for reconsidering, going to supervision again, rediscovering, and so on and so on. I assume we need to be shorter in our answers because there are many questions now and the time is limited.
Let's jump to the next one.
I mean, Jakob, not that I meant to cut you off.
But I think supervision is super important, just to insist. Because, I mean, when my supervisor says, like, how are you feeling? It's usually when I go like, oh, that's true. Like, actually, I was feeling something, that something has something to do with me or not, or with the case, or with something that the patient said 2 months ago, etc. But never a clear cut.
Okay, so next question is from Bogdan Ropotica. What do you guys think is the relationship of psychoanalysis with the social? I can't help but feel that because Freud was a bit conservative, psychoanalysis never quite studied issues like collective trauma or political organization. I'm always surprised that stuff like Freud Marxism wasn't further developed. Yes.
So this is what I received 2 days ago. There are now more and more people, more and more, or possibly on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, more and more books about this. There is a Society for Psychoanalysis and Politics, and I think this could be said of Freud, but not of contemporary psychoanalysis. Collective trauma, social trauma, there are now books about it everywhere. Bogdan, if you're more curious, I could share some of the titles or names of authors that I've found most interesting in recent years.
Well, I can just say that it's a similar trend in the Jungian world, and there's a lot of books and publications and also activities and activism actually, where psychoanalysts are working outside of the clinical room. One such organization is called Analysis and Activism. I think it's Andrew Samuels in the UK who started that. And I'm actually involved with a project with them now, which is called Therapists for Ukraine, where we are offering not only psychoanalysis, but a different type of psychotherapy for people who are affected by the war. So I think there's a general sort of catching up on this also in the Jungian world.
Yeah, I also like, okay, Freud might have been conservative in the terms of maybe he wasn't using much of Marx, but he's got, in 1920, he's got an essay, which is I would say a bit shy, but quite useful approximation to social psychology and a group analysis and the analysis of the ego. And he's got some anthropological work, quite speculative, but in order to say, like, you know, in psychoanalysis, I mean, in the inner mind, it's impossible, it's not isolated. And now you get full theoretical tendencies in psychoanalysis talking about intersubjectivity, of social determinants of mental health, etc. I wouldn't say there is not much Freudo-Marxism. I would say there's a lot. And in the case of, for example, Lacan uses Marxist language to write. This added value of Marx, the concept of the plus, it's used in a inner mind kind of workings of individual psychology, in the sense of there is always something that it's lost in the chain of value in language from Lacan. And at the time Lacan was working, so the 50s, 60s, 70s, he was taking let's say the Revolution of '68, for example, he was taking all that language into the theory as well. But Marx was already 100 years old, and I think there is a lot of social psychoanalysis, and usually it is of a, if not Marxist, it's pretty right. I mean, left-wing leaning. Usually psychoanalysis. What would you say?
I wanted to add a tiny detail about Germany. Here, especially in Frankfurt, psychoanalysis was a very powerful tool for people who were thinking about how to change the society. And these are these famous Frankfurt School names. And then at a certain moment, the German state realized that psychoanalysis was basically destroyed during the Nazi years, that psychoanalysts were either murdered or emigrated. And as a form of, I don't know, reparation, people could get psychoanalytic training free of charge for several years, and the state would pay for it. And then this health insurance system came to the level, to the point, when you can get even as much as 300 sessions free of charge. And I believe this is excellent for patients, and I believe this is very bad for psychoanalysis, because after that, any Marxist left-wing idea of reconsidering capitalism, money, and so on, everything we've spoken about at the beginning, disappeared. Now, if you want to make a revolution, they tell you, go to the gym, eat vegetarian, go to a psychotherapist.
Okay, next question is from Adriana. Can you define free floating attention with your own words? How do you experience it in this session?
Some of my, I meant to say best sessions. Some of the sessions I enjoy most, I'm not sure I can even show you properly here as I'm sitting now. I have a desk here. My elbow is on the armchair, and I'm like this. And I am listening, but I'm somehow half lost. I'm not asleep, nowhere near that, but I'm half lost, and I'm not processing so fully logically with this focus that I have now as I'm trying to formulate a sentence in a foreign language. And then totally stupid things start coming up in my mind. Superficial and irrelevant. Is there noise in the streets? What do I need to do tomorrow at the university, or this or that? And then usually one of them is so stupid, I have no idea what to do about it. So one time in supervision, I heard about a dream of a patient who went into a hostel, rented a room, they gave her the bed, the bed and the pillow, and she proceeded to sleep. And as I'm listening, I become obsessed with a stupid idea. Why do you want the pillow in a hostel? Why didn't she ask for a blanket? Completely irrelevant for the history of that person, or for my own history, or for the history of the person I'm supervising at the moment. I become obsessed out of nowhere with the pillow. And I think these ideas, the stupider they are at the first moment, are the most precious. I hope this helps. This description probably is as stupid as the questions or thoughts I've mentioned several times.
Well, I would just like to say that I think it's true to say that psychoanalysis or analytic work is a meditative practice. And somehow, you know, this meditation of two two people meditating over one person's life, at least for me, I think it's very important to sort of to come in without any preconceived ideas, or try to be very open, and of course remembering what happened in last session, but still be rather, you know, listening. And when I say listening, of course, it's a practice of listening with the whole body. You listen to what the person say, but you also listen to the room, and you listen through what you hear, but you also listen through your body. I mean, we're all different. We all perceive information differently, but that's how I listen, and that's how I wait, and that's how I let the attention sort of, you know, it's an inattention, but it's also, you know, a lot of I think I would say it's not meaning it's relaxed. You know, I think there's a lot of tension that one holds as an analyst, but it's a relaxed and tense at the same time in some way, as weather can be. So the best way I can speak about it is just it's a meditative practice, and I have to put myself into the space of the other person, try to, and knowing that I might not always pick up exactly what he or she feels. I might also pick up things again that belongs to my psyche and my body. But there is something around that, clearing myself and clearing my mind of preconceived ideas, and entering into the meditative practice with the other person.
Oh, that's very interesting. I really like the weather as an example, kind of how you hold it in that way. Really cool that it can be tense, but also, yeah.
Well, there's a story, but I don't think we have time for it today. I might record it another day. It's a story that Jung loved to tell about the rainmaker, the person who makes it rain. And he uses that story in order to speak about what the analyst does. But we have to wait, and we have to hold, and, you know, for the weather to release itself. Yeah. But I might, maybe that's a recording for another day.
Yes, you should. That sounds really nice. Okay, from Mark Gamani. Thoughts on the nexus of psychoanalysis and brain sciences, thinking of the work beginning with Mark Solms and others. Does this have application in the clinic?
Well, there is a very obvious application in the clinic that has to do with a discipline that some people call neuropsychoanalysis, which is psychoanalytic therapy or psychoanalysis indeed, with people who might have let's say an organic, an accident, or just an organic problem in their central nervous system, in the brain. And actually this is brought a lot of, I mean, it's kind of a new clinical field for psychoanalysis, in which analysts who know a lot of neurosciences can take the, let's say, the physical diagnosis of that person that just had an accident that hit their head or etc., and inform their practice, knowing what are the things that are going to be more difficult for this person, if it's going to be something related to memory or attention or consciousness, consciousness in the sense of like level of consciousness, like people are more obnubilated or completely conscious, or they have, let's say, an epileptic reaction in which they lose contact with reality for a bit, etc. And I have colleagues and friends who work there, particularly the University of Bangor in Wales. It's pretty big on this. If you want to look for how psychoanalysis can be used, let's say, as neuropsychoanalysis, psychoanalysis informed neurologically, in the clinic, I would recommend you Oliver Turnbull as an author. The work I know about Mark Solms is a little bit more in the way of using neurosciences to give a twist or to complement Freudian or psychoanalytic theories, which are usually not that much interested in how the brain works, physically speaking. But what he does is to find concepts that clinicians and theoreticians have found and say, actually, this has a neural correlate, it has a physical manifestation also. Or the fact that there are certain concepts in psychoanalysis that cannot be reduced to a brain area or to a, but it has to do with the functioning of the whole of the brain, for example. Now, using, there is also a big argumentation against this, against neuropsychoanalysis and its usefulness in the clinics. And when we talk about clinics that are not necessarily with people who would have an organic central nervous system problem, it's more difficult, at least for me, to know how to integrate these concepts. And Rachel Blass has got some papers about how actually, okay, it's very interesting, but it doesn't really enrich the practice in the consulting room. I am fascinated by neurosciences, but I don't think I use it that much with my patients. But when I use it more to understand theories and the books I read, etc. But not that much in clinics. I don't know if your experience is different.
I think there is this very huge criticism of the National Institute of Mental Health in the US, which has spent billions of dollars on neuroscientific research. And many psychiatrists now are writing that this has never helped a single patient. Does not mean it will not, and one day we will not figure things out. But so far, huge investment, a lot of epistemic gain, but a little clinical gain.
Do you want to say something, Jakob, or should we take the next? Okay, let's continue. It would be great if you could tell us more about the difference between classic psychoanalysis and Jungian analysis.
Read the name.
What did you say? Read the name.
You're so mean. Can you read it, Alexander? I'm so sorry, I cannot read your name. I'm so sorry.
Odysseas Zafirakis.
Oh, thank you. Saving the day, saving my face. Thank you.
Well, I think it's a big question, but I'd like to say, first of all, I think what would be, first of all, obvious is that a classic psychoanalysis is on the couch, no? And you would lie on the couch, while Jung, was the first analyst, supposedly, who said, like, I'm going to face my patients and work with them, facing each other instead. There's no sort of ground rule that, a basic rule that the patient just talks, but there's more, I would say, of a little bit more maybe of a dialogue even in that regard. We don't work Jungians. I say we don't work with only free association on the same level. We don't meet as often as classical psychoanalysts. It's a classical Jungian analysis is 2 times a week, and most of the patients I meet with in Berlin cannot afford that or are not coming that often. But then, the question, what actually, how different is it? It depends on the analyst, It really depends, I think there's as many types of Jungian therapy as there is analysts. Everyone does it a little bit differently. But Jung's theory and Freud's theory is very different. And Jung's theory, it's not a complete theory, but it was very much built in opposition to, or in relationship to, or in a dynamic with psychoanalysis and classic psychoanalytic theory. So in that regard, when you study it to become a Jungian analyst, you do read psychoanalysis, you do read some classic and contemporary texts, but I would say it's often with a bias, at least in Zurich. I think it's a little bit different in the UK. But yeah, so it's a very different setting, it's a different frequency. But I think there are also many similarities. I think we both schools work with the unconscious, putting a lot of value to dreams, putting the emphasis on listening, and again, there's not one Jungian analysis. There's plenty, and Jung also famously said that for each patient, you need to invent a new therapeutic language. You need to develop a new language for each patient, a new type of analysis. He was very against the idea of using, for example, concepts like anima or shadow, or maybe even individuation, I'm not sure, in the actual setting. So to try to free this space from these sort of preconceived, concepts that, we have, these fields have now developed. So this is a big question, but there's many differences, but there are also a lot of similarities that connects the fields.
And what would you say, because you were talking a little bit about like the clinical practice. So how would you recognize if you get into a room where some therapy is happening? How would you recognize if it's Jungian or classical psychoanalytic? But the theory, what do you think are like, I know there are several, so it's a thing that we could speak for weeks, but what do you think are the central theoretical tenets that are distinguishable from classical psychoanalysis or IPA psychoanalysis and Jung?
I assume the question is for Jakob, and Jakob, I will let you answer it. I just would like to say this deserves a separate video or a series of videos.
I agree. I think it's a big question, and to go through the Jungian concepts and the Jungian view of the unconscious and how the unconscious relates to the personal unconscious, to the collective unconscious, to it's the whole structure that Jung developed and the whole theory. Although it's again not a complete theory, it's very different. It's very different from the Freudian. But that said, I'm not sure in the actual setting as a patient, you need to notice much of that. Again, I think it's more that unites us. And I think what unites us very much so in psychotherapy is, also the focus on patients and also the view on human suffering and how we view symptoms, as holding a certain meaning and something that can be understood, in order and something necessary for nothing to just get away with, but something that that it's a communication of the unconscious. So I'd be happy to sort of, dig in more into this question and to share the Jungian view and to have more of a dialogue with all of you around this. But it's that's all I can say for now, I think.
Okay, we have one last question, then we need to wrap this up, I think. It's from Dushan Kosala, who writes, I can't stop thinking about one person. I think my enjoyment is structured with it. I feel secure feelings and I can skip the reality when I think of her. Is this part of a attachment, or I don't know?
I don't know if I understand very well.
Yes, it is not.
What is the question, whether this is attachment?
I mean, it certainly is related to attachment, but in what way, it is very difficult to say when there's so little information. If I may say in a word, in relation to Sarah's comment, I'm glad that Sarah is looking forward, but I don't know what medical circle is. I don't know who Kyle K is, and I have no idea what this could refer to.
Right, yes. They're also looking forward to Alexander's med circle talks, yeah. But there's Sarah also wrote, could psychoanalytic therapy occur without going into dreams? And
well, it can, but why? Dreams are so interesting and so inspiring.
They are, that's true. And terrifying sometimes.
Well, even then they are inspiring.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And interesting, sure.
But I think practically, there are people, some people dream more, some people remember their dreams better or more clearly and can retell them in the sessions. And I've had processes with people who shared very little, if almost no dreams. And I would still say that we had analysis of sorts and that there was a change. But when the dreams are in the session, it does give another dimension to the work. But the body also dreams, so there are different ways to work with the unconscious, And as a supervisor said to me, if the person doesn't dream, treat what they share from their waking life as a dream, so that you can work with it symbolically. That's
an interesting idea.
Yeah, very good idea.
Okay, so
let me just say something about the question of that we cannot really understand what the question is, but that speaks a little bit about attachment. And I have to say something about this because attachment theory is one of those psychological theories that is permeating into the non-professional population. And as it happens with not only psychoanalysis, but many different concepts in psychology, that there is a little bit of a either watered down or slightly changed way of understanding when it goes from psychology and professionals to the general public. And usually, of course, for the general public, it's super interesting to know psychology. I mean, the first class I had of psychology ever in my life, the director of the school said like, oh, you're going to find that you're going to study years and years this thing, and then everyone is a psychologist anyway. Because of course we're thinking about the mind all the time. It's impossible not to. But when it comes to attachment, it seems like the concept has transpired into general language as a thing that is a way of relating, which is, in a way it is, but actually what is attachment is a way of dealing with anxiety. It doesn't have to do necessarily with like if you are, let's say, secure or insecure or disorganizedly attached, etc. It doesn't mean that this is the person that you are and this is like a style that you will repeat. Actually, you can have different styles depending on the person that you're relating with. But also it talks about a general way of relating to the other, but in the context of anxiety. It's not just the way that you relate. It's like, what do you do when you fear that, when you have anxiety, when you have fear, Bowlby would say, then you get attachment activated. Attachment is not usually activated, not even in very close relationships, unless something happens, something threatening happens. And then is where your attachment tends to show itself. So it's not just about relating with someone, it's relating with someone in terms of of working through some anxiety, either confiding and being trustful in the other and in your own capacities, which is secure attachment, or go outside and try to make other people continuously to do something with your anxiety, to calm you down, or not to trust that other people are able to do any. That was anxious attachment, and then with avoidant attachment is you have anxiety, but no one can take care of this, so you do it by yourself. In such a way that sometimes you don't even feel the anxiety. I mean, then you start somatizing or you get burnt out, but it's about anxiety more than the relationship in itself. I don't know if I explained myself correctly, but it's just a little thing that has been happening to me a lot, in which people tell me, oh, this is attachment. No, it's not. Relating with people is not necessarily attachment.
Okay, so we had Midwestern Belle. She wrote a very, very nice comment. She wrote that they love Berlin, keeping psychoanalysis alive and current. And she also wrote a question. Yeah. No, Berlin Psychoanalytic also, yes. Did I say Berlin only?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But she also has a question. How was the concept of resistance discovered? Does this always mean the analyst is right?
We have a brief series on resistance, and I've tried, I don't think I've focused on this issue explicitly, but I've tried to say something about it. First of all, resistance is obvious in our everyday lives and sessions more or less every day, and whoever was in personal analysis will remember it very clearly, how there are points in the middle of a session when you become incomparably more stupid than you were 10 seconds ago, or similar stuff. So someone ages ago, I assume, historically speaking, Freud, noticed it and discovered it and named it first because it is present in the clinical practice. But then it can be abused. It can be put to service by some psychoanalysts to say that we are always right and the patients are always wrong. And that can even be an ideology in some circles in the world of psychoanalysis. But in the last decades, there are more and more papers about the resistance in the analyst, about the resistance in the analyst patient dyad, that hopefully will be a remedy against that. The idea of defense mechanisms also can be used to prove that the patient is always wrong and the therapist is always right, but the life is never as simple as that.
Okay, thank you. We really need to wrap this up now. We wanted to only do 45 minutes, but it's so nice to hang out and interact with you, even if it's only through chat. Next time we might open up the live stream or the Zoom so that you can join directly. That would be really nice too. But it's been super nice hanging out, right?
Yes, of course.
With and answering your questions and hearing from you. We really appreciate your feedback. And always feel free to send an email if you have any questions that you want to have answered about psychoanalysis. And or if you have suggestions on topics that you want us to cover, please do let us know. And we will, as I said, continue having these hangouts. And we will absolutely let you know the next time that happens.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.